Good morning. It is so good to be with you guys again. I love Kansas City Oasis. You guys are awesome and rocking the world. And I would much rather be listening to the amazing Greta Bosper. And I can't wait for you all to meet her when she finds her passport. So, so bear with me. Just bear, you're a generous crowd, you're a kind crowd, but give me extra slack for being a pinch hitter today. And what I want to do is maybe not so much a talk as kind of a conversation among friends, because I just want to share some ideas I've been thinking about, kind of just think out loud with you and maybe get a little feedback from you at the end of it. And I've been thinking a lot, because, when people find out you're secular, one question they often ask you again and again is, well, now that you don't believe in God, what is your purpose in life? Where do you find meaning? I get that all the time. I should be used to it by now, but people still ask it. And the assumption behind the question still amazes me, because it's like once you stop believing, you're just going to sit around and give up living, no God to serve. Guess I'm going to eat Ben & Jerry's and binge watch Game of Thrones. That sounds like a good day to me. But anyway, for a long time in human history, or at least in kind of the recorded part of human history, people didn't worry too much about their sense of purpose in life because it was given to them, right? By your culture, by your station in life that you were born into, or a lot of times by religion. So one example is the Westminster Catechism of 1647. A catechism is a manual for religious instruction written in a question and answer format. And it's meant to be memorized. Anyone ever work with a catechism at some point in your life? Yeah, quite a few. Wow, yeah, me too. And they are insidious things because it's still in your brain, isn't it? It's still there. They're very effective. Anyway, the Westminster Catechism of 1647 begins the first question. Question, what is the chief end of man? Answer, the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. That's it. That's your purpose. That's why you're here. And for generations, that opening question of the Westminster Catechism was used to indoctrinate little Calvinist minds on both sides of the Atlantic. A very famous document, very effective. And most monotheistic religions have some variation of that, right? You're here. So in 2002, a megachurch pastor out in California named Rick Warren tapped into this desire for purpose and meaning by writing a book called The Purpose-Driven Life. Yes. And it was whatever you think about it, it was a stroke of marketing genius. The book, he answered people's burning questions about purpose and meaning in succinct, memorable phrases, and the book sold like more than 30 million copies. 90 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. He tapped into, there was a market for that. Oh, let me share a few quotes to give you a sense of how he kind of updates that. Okay, here, this is... Okay, we're not completely happy here because we're not supposed to be! Exclamation point. Oh, and bear in mind, this is not, we don't go in for religion bashing in the Oasis movement. This is not a critique of religion. This is merely trying to understand why this book struck such a big chord with people, okay? How about this one? You were not put on earth to be remembered. You were put here to prepare for eternity. That's a big theme in the book. You're just here for a short amount of time, and you're going to be in eternity for, eternity. Is that right? Okay, so... now, there's a lot of good stuff in the book about the importance of helping others and finding meaning in service. It's good stuff. He says things like, others are going to find healing in your wounds. Your greatest message will come out of your deepest hurt. This theme of using kind of your challenges and struggles in life to help other people in their struggles. That's really nice. But then he says something like, God intentionally allows you to go through painful experiences to equip you for ministry to others. Okay, so God allows you to suffer so you can help other people in their suffering, which begs the question, why did he let them suffer in the first place? And what you get is this vicious cycle of God-induced suffering that's supposed to make you better somehow. So anyway, that's kind of a digression. Okay, but here's the deal. Okay, this is the main theme, the really, really big idea of this book is summed up in this quote. This is really the whole book. Without God, life has no purpose. And without purpose, life has no meaning. And without meaning, life has no significance. Which is kind of redundant. But anyway, that's the big theme. So the single best-selling book of the 21st century so far asserts that without God, life is empty and significant. And more than 30 million people have bought this book, which means we are surrounded by people in our world, in our culture, that assume because you are secular, you lead this vacuous, empty, meaningless existence. You know, you must have some kind of depressing life. So that's still all around us. And so a couple of questions, as I've been thinking about the secular meaning of life, and this is where I just want to think out loud with you and maybe get your thoughts at the end. What I've been thinking is, number one, maybe we should answer the question by questioning the question, because the question itself is problematic. What's the purpose of life? Well, who says there has to be one purpose, right? Why this need for an ultimate anything? You know, that human desire for ultimates and absolutes, I think, is kind of problematic. So I think we ought to question the question, because I don't think the question even comports to reality as we experience it. So from now on, when somebody asks me that, what's your purpose now? I'm not going to accept the premise of the question, because who says there has to be one ultimate purpose? It's a crazy assumption. Secondly, what is meaning anyway? What is purpose anyway? When you get right down to it, isn't a sense of meaning or purpose a chemical reaction in our brain? All these things, these feelings, emotions that we talk about, fear, happiness, anger, rage, some of the things that Michaela put up on the screen, all those feelings we talk about are terms that we use to describe neurological events. Various combinations of oxytocin and dopamine and serotonin and other neurotransmitters this English major knows nothing about. But I do know they're there, because people have told me about them. And so really every second of every day, are we not just kind of modulating our neurochemistry? I mean, that's ultimately what our life, every second, every day, we are modulating our neurochemistry. Thank you. So these things, happiness, joy, love, meaning, purpose, are not eternal, disembodied concepts floating around out there. They don't exist outside. They exist in our head. They exist in our head. And like every other deep feeling and emotion that we have, having a sense of meaning or purpose is probably an evolutionary adaptation. It enhanced the survival of our species in the ancestral environment, a Darwinian device to enhance survival and increase reproduction. That's what it all boils down to. So maybe it just gave us a reason to get up in the morning and make more offspring or whatever. But and so it's there. And then what gives you a reason to wake up in the morning can vary an awful lot from person to person, right? Because what works for your neurotransmitters is not necessarily what works for my neurotransmitters. And so it seems to me, if we talk to people about finding meaning in life, and this is where I'm just thinking out loud, it seems that finding a sense of meaning or purpose would involve paying attention to what works for your neurotransmitters and what doesn't work and be okay with that. And focus more on the things that work for you and not so much on the things that don't work. And so purpose is going to be, there isn't one overriding purpose. There's 7 billion people on earth. Maybe there are 7 billion plus reasons and purposes and sense of meaning in life. And I think we need to celebrate that and embrace that. And so I'm going to share with you a little bit about me, because I find that the older I get, the more I'm learning slowly what works and doesn't work. So here are things that work for me. Reading. I am a compulsive reader. If there is nothing else to read, I will read the label on a soup can or a cereal box. Seriously, okay? For some bizarre reason, I don't know why, but ever since I was a child, I can remember I've always been fascinated with Chinese and Japanese characters. And I could sit and study them and practice writing them for hours. Later in life, I had a chance to live in Japan for a few years, which is wonderful because I was surrounded by characters all day long. It's just something in my brain fires over that. I am passionate about naps. And naps. I tried it, and JJ is making me think about my nap already. And I try to take a nap every day of my life. So now, here are some things that don't work for me. Golf. I don't get it. I don't. NASCAR. The NFL. Bear with me, because we're going to talk about that little reaction some of you just had, okay? I went to the liquor store about 3 Saturdays ago, and the clerk at the liquor store asked me if I was ready for the big game. And I said, "What game?" And I'm buying booze for my reading. And so then I look around the liquor store, and like every other person is wearing a Houston Texans football jersey. And apparently there was some playoff thing happening. I don't know. I didn't get the memo on that. Hunting, I've never wanted to shoot a deer. Okay, wait a minute. Golf, NASCAR, NFL, I might not even be a guy. So here's the thing. And this gets back to your little reaction that you had when I've seen NFL insignia. I'm assuming it is. I'm not sure because I don't know that much about it. But just because I do not share your passion for the NFL or golf or NASCAR or whatever is in no way, shape, or form a critique of your passion for that. Just because I do not get the NFL does not mean I think the NFL is bad. Not even remotely. I'm just saying it doesn't work for me. There's simply no meaning there. Life is really, really short, and I'm getting old fast, and I'm really just, I just feel like I do better when I can focus on the things that work. I'm really narrowing things down to what works for me and focus on that. I'm already kind of freaked out that I'm not going to be able to read every book that I want to read before I die. It's not going to happen. I'm kind of going in pre-mourning for that. So why should I waste my precious hours for things that don't work for my neurochemistry? It makes no sense. Now, if you have a Super Bowl party, I would appreciate an invitation because I like parties. I'm not going to watch the game. So, it seems to me that and I think, does that make sense? That I think, if someone isn't into what we're into, we sometimes get kind of defensive about it. And there's no need for that. I can rejoice in the difference. It makes me think, I've always thought that there should be no bigger advocate for gay men in the world than straight men. From an evolutionary perspective, it's like, less competition. We should want there to be a lot of gay guys in the world. You know what I mean? It makes no sense. That wasn't in. I'm just making shit up. Sorry. Anyway. This is what you get when you get a pinch hitter. Okay, so it seems to me that we used to live in a one-size-fits-all world. When I was growing up, there was a standard narrative, a standard life trajectory that people more or less expected you to take, and this standard narrative kind of provided your sense of purpose and meaning. And that's pretty much what everybody did. You went to school, maybe college, started a career, got married way too young to a member of the opposite sex, had kids, bought a house in the suburbs, work till you retire, buy an RV, drive around until you go to the nursing home and die. And that's pretty much what it was. And look, okay, now if you have an RV, I'm not criticizing your RV. I'm just saying this is what it was. And that's pretty much what everybody did. And if you didn't follow the standard narrative, you were looked on as somehow a little bit weird, right? I mean, heck, we even back in the day all ate the same thing. Do you know the menu at the Cracker Barrel? Okay, about 30 years ago, that's what all of America ate at every damn meal. Cracker Barrel, okay? We didn't know any better. We were suspicious of foods that we thought were weird or, you know, and again, Cracker Barrel is a fine establishment, okay? A reliable place to stop on the road. But you always know what you're going to get there, and the menu hasn't changed. Well, apparently there are quite a few people in this country that want to make us all eat at the Cracker Barrel again. Now, they've been there all along, but now they are emboldened. And they want to cram the old standard narrative about life down everybody's throat. And we are not going to let it happen. And we are not going to turn back the clock, and I do not want to live in a Cracker Barrel world anymore, with an emphasis on cracker. I do not want to live in a one-size-fits-all world. I want to help create a many-size-fits-many-people world. I love our 5 core values in the Oasis movement, but the 5th core value has had special meaning for me in the past few months: be accepting and be accepted. This movement, and it is becoming a movement, Wichita has launched, Austin in a couple weeks. We got, more on the horizon. And this movement that we are building together can make a powerful statement to the Cracker Barrel movement. We are building a community that says people who are different from me are not a threat to me. People who are different from me enrich me immeasurably. In the Oasis movement, we come from all walks of life, various ethnicities, nationalities, former religious background, you name it. And we have room for non-traditional relationship structures, non-traditional family structures. And here's the thing, we do not just tolerate diversity, we embrace it and celebrate it. And that's different than tolerance. And as new Oasis communities arise around the country, we are building an ever-growing tribe that is helping, we are going to help rewrite the standard narrative. And in the past few months, so many of us have been saying, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? Well, you found it. This is one thing you can do. And I think the difference we are making, the difference that we are creating a network of safe places for humanity across North America. And the urgency of what we are doing together grows by the day. So we are doing something, and it is beautiful, and I thank you for being a part of it, and I thank you for letting me come and talk with you today. Appreciate it.
Okay. We're going to open up for Q&A. Just please ask a question. Raise your hand so I can come over to you as I bounce, if from person to person. No, you can't say anything. Oh. Yeah, go for it.
Well, I would. I'd kind of be interested to hear from you guys how. Like when people ask you that question about, if you have a question for me, that's great. But if you'd like to, I wouldn't mind hearing very, very briefly how you respond to the meaning and purpose question too. Okay.
Do you want to answer that?
Kind of. Okay, so recently I had gotten into a conversation with someone about how, since my purpose wasn't driven by a God-based drive, that regardless of what I did, it wouldn't be as good as if someone else did it, because they were doing it for God, and I was doing it because I was doing it for my own purpose. And how do you react to that? That your purpose isn't good enough because it doesn't invoke a higher being?
Yeah, I guess you could be blunt and just say that sounds condescending. I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah. I see that question. But, we know that why we do the things we do, and it's because of our neurochemistry. So if they can't acknowledge that reality, I'm not sure how you can answer that. How does having God as a basis for your sense of purpose, why is that inherently, or God's or... Yeah, it's a difficult question. If someone holds that belief, I don't know how you kind of get through there. Let's think about that. Yeah.
I've only had that question come up a few times in my life where someone has asked, what's if you don't believe in God, what's your purpose? What's the ultimate meaning of life? And I was lucky to take a philosophy class in college at around age 19, and they touched on the idea of the flawed theory of an ultimate purpose, that if there's a purpose, then what's the purpose for the purpose, and then what's the purpose for that purpose? And
right.
So it's only come up a few times, but I've always kind of just went to that whole flawed philosophy theory of, okay, well, if God's your purpose, and they always come to the point that it's not for us to understand. So then the discussion's over, but that's always where I've gone with that.
That's good. Yeah, very good.
So, hi, Mike.
Hi, Carol.
To answer your question about what my purpose is, and touch a little bit on that, is back in 2008, I had what can only clinically be described as a nervous breakdown. I had a panic disorder and things like that. And sort of as I came out of that, I realized, look, I can't control anything. I can only control so much. I can't control everybody else, so I am going to treat others how I want to be treated. And that's evolved into sort of treating people how I want my family treated, because that's how I try and separate myself out of it from being selfish. But to have a God-based purpose seems actually less noble to me, because when I want to show compassion and I want to receive compassion because I know that person cares about me and I care about that person. And so if somebody is being generous with me, that's great, that's awesome. But if they're doing it because they feel like there's a big scorecard up in the sky counting their stuff, I think that's just not genuine.
Yeah, you're right. And that made me think of something I had kind of meant to throw in there. And this kind of gets back to the first question that was very good that I didn't answer. There's a flaw with the golden rule, right? Everyone points to the golden rule all the time as emphasis, as an example of the superiority of, well, number one, the golden rule is based on something that evolutionary scientists call reciprocal altruism. And now apparently even plants are nice to each other. The golden rule is, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. To which Oscar Wilde once said, the problem with that is, what if my neighbor has different tastes? And so now people are talking about the platinum rule, which is do unto others as they would have you do unto them, right? So putting yourself in the place, not imposing your sense of what the other person needs, but listening to them and how they want to be helped. And so I think that might be one way to challenge if someone tries to come at you with the golden rule being all like the apex of human morality. We point out the flaw in the golden rule and talk about the platinum rule. So.
Good morning, Mike.
Good morning.
So I kind of ascribe to what I like to call an optimistic nihilism. And
I like that.
I was wondering if you think that there's any difference between having a purpose and setting goals for yourself, and whether you truly need to have a purpose in order to set goals for yourself.
Oh, can we say that again? I blanked everything.
Is there a difference between having goals and working to achieve them and having a purpose? Or can goals just be a function of purpose? Like, what do you feel about all of that?
I guess I would see, it's off the top of my head, I guess I would see goals as a, like, kind of a function of having, purpose. I have a broader sense, like, I have a, and then doesn't your purpose, here again, to me it changes throughout your life, right? I mean, that's the other thing, we're not static. Michaela did a good job with that in the community moment. And so the sense of purpose for me changes a lot, all the time. I used to be really into high wilderness backpacking, extensive trips and all that. And now my idea of camping is staying at a motel where the doors open to the parking lot. That's, so I don't do that. So once upon a time that fired my neurochemistry. So I would see it makes sense to me that goals are something that work within like broader sense of purpose, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, to kind of answer your question, I think that based off of, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, what she was saying about the kind of ulterior motives of doing good for like a tack in the sky. I've been learning more and more about how human beings in general, we are not as good at multitasking as we think we are.
Not as good at what?
At multitasking.
Oh, yes.
So
yes,
as a mom and, the job and the house and the friends and the daughter, wife, sister, cousin, all these things, I think I can do everything. And I'm slowly learning, like, I really can't do everything. I should do one thing at a time and try to do it well. And so I'm a nurse. So if I'm teaching my patient about whatever's going on, but my end goal is to be like, and I gotta slip religion in here somehow, I'm not giving my full attention to their needs. And same thing, if you're an engineer or an accountant or a teacher or a psychologist or whatever your purpose is in your work, is give that your purpose because it brings you joy. If it doesn't bring you joy, see if you can find a way to have it bring you joy. But I get a lot of joy out of what I do, whether it's hanging out with my kids or spending time with friends or preparing a meal that I'm really hoping is going to taste good, because it brings me joy.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to eliminate those things that don't bring me joy.
Exactly.
So I would say, figure out how to, for me, that's a good purpose for me. And that is a very broad category that somebody could say, well, if you don't believe in God, then what's your purpose? It's like, well, it's to bring joy to others by doing things that bring me joy.
Yeah, I love that. And how beautiful that we can make up our own purpose. That's great. No, it's wonderful. Well said. Thank you.
One more back here. We only have
Okay.
2 minutes left here.
I apologize if this question is ignorant or insensitive, but I'm curious, will the Oasis in Austin foster any connections with the atheist community of Austin?
Oh, I think they already are. They did some kind of attended some kind of a Darwin event fairly recently. So they've been in, and there's at least one person on the planning team of Austin Oasis that is involved with the in leadership of I think the atheist group there. But yeah, they've been in conversation with the other groups. Absolutely. Good.
All right. Well, Mike, thank you for sharing with us today and helping
Thanks,
fill
everybody.
the space we needed. Thank you.